isn't story only for views. It's to help you see the warning signs, learn from what they ignored.
He didn't yell. That's what I remember most about that night. I thought he might. Hell, I almost hoped he would. Anything but that eerie, leveled voice as he turned toward me and asked, "So how many times does he get it?" I laughed, or tried to. A soft, breathy exhale that caught in my throat halfway through. My hand tightened around the wine glass, but I didn't take another sip. I could still hear the sitcom behind us, two actors arguing about lasagna like the world wasn't falling apart. But all I felt was the weight of his eyes. Not angry, just awake, like something that had been asleep for a long time had just opened its eyes and decided it was done pretending. "I was joking," I said quietly. He nodded, too slowly. "Sure." He stood up then, stretched like he always did when he was thinking, and walked into the kitchen. I watched him open the fridge, stare at it like he forgot why he came, then close it again and walk to the bedroom without another word. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. I sat there on the couch for maybe another half hour, swirling the wine, trying to find a version of the conversation that felt harmless. Just a joke. Just a bad joke. Just the kind of thing you say when you're tired and trying to be funny and something inside you is dying and you don't know how else to say it. But the truth was, I'd said it with a little edge. Not a blade, just a needle. Something meant to sting, something to remind him I had options, that I still mattered. What I didn't expect was that he'd start acting like he did too. He was quiet all night. He brushed his teeth, climbed into bed, rolled to his side and said, "Good night, Casey," like we were business partners sharing a hotel suite. I stared at the back of his head for a long time, wondering what I'd awakened. I didn't sleep well. I kept waking up to the sound of rain tapping against the window and the faint buzz of a charger connecting, disconnecting. Once I turned over and saw the glow of his screen reflected in the mirror across the room. Well, he was up, doing something. And for the first time in years, I didn't know what. In the morning, he was already gone. His side of the bed was smooth, not unmade, smoothed, like he'd sat there a while just thinking. The coffee pot was still warm. A folded shirt hung on the back of the chair where he used to toss his sweaters, and his tablet, the one he always left on the counter, was missing. He didn't text, didn't leave a note, just gone. Around 11, I checked our shared cloud to see if he'd added anything to the calendar. He hadn't, but something was off. A few of my synced photos looked blurry, like they'd been accessed and resaved. I opened the backup folder, scrolling fast now. 2 entries were downloaded overnight, message archive and device sync. My heart thudded. No, he wouldn't, except he would. He was methodical like that, always quiet, always precise. The kind of man who could assemble an entire backyard shed with no instructions and not one extra screw left over. I walked to the kitchen, pulled open the drawer where we kept the mail. His keys were still there, his watch too, but the envelope with our joint login codes was gone. I checked my messages. Nothing new from Ethan, no missed calls, just the usual feed from my sister and a couple of work emails. Still, I felt exposed, like he'd peeled the skin off the life I'd built, and now he was just staring at the raw underneath. When I stepped into the shower, I found his razor missing from the corner shelf. Not gone, just moved, like he wanted me to notice. That night I tried to fix it. I wore the soft tank he used to say felt like home. Poured him a drink, even set the table, which I hadn't done in weeks. When he came in, I smiled too big. "Dinner?" I said. He nodded, sat down, ate quietly, barely looked at me. At one point, I reached for the wine, and he reached too, and our hands brushed. I looked at him then, tried to catch his eyes, but he was already pulling away. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "just thinking." And that was worse than anything he could have shouted, because I knew him. When he thought like that, things moved, quietly, strategically, unstoppably. I didn't sleep again that night. And when I checked our calendar in the morning, I saw a new folder title appear and vanish within seconds. Exit plan. That's when I knew I wasn't the one watching anymore. He was. He left the house before I woke up. No note, no text. Just the faint echo of the garage door shutting and his side of the bed perfectly undisturbed. Not even a crease. That used to be his way of saying I'm still here, still trying. Now it felt like a signature on the start of a separation. I walked barefoot across the cold kitchen tiles, half expecting to see his laptop open on the table or a mug left in the sink. Nothing. Just silence, the kind that doesn't feel peaceful. Just hollow. At first, I thought maybe he was just cooling off, that the night before had hit a nerve and he was off running errands or distracting himself with work. But by noon, the edges of that hope started to fray. His location was off. He always left it on. Not because we were tracking each other, but because we didn't hide. Until now. I checked our shared bank account on a whim while waiting for the kettle to boil. The balance flashed on the screen, and I blinked, then stared again. $74,000. Gone. Not stolen, transferred. To his separate account, the one we agreed we'd only use for emergencies, written out under Financial Clause 4B, fully legal, fully unspoken. My throat dried instantly. The kettle shrieked. I didn't even pour the water, just stood there, phone in one hand, trying to piece together what I might have triggered. Around 2 p.m., I got an automated message from our marriage counselor's portal. Thank you for your request. Session logs and notes will be compiled by end of week. I never made that request. Marla, he'd contacted her, and the logs he asked for? I didn't need to guess which sessions, the solo ones, the ones where I claimed I needed space to process privately. When in truth, I was venting, spinning a version of events that made me look like the quietly suffering one. I never imagined he'd ask for the transcripts, let alone that Marla would give them. But he hadn't confronted me. That was the part I couldn't wrap my head around. He didn't rage, he didn't slam a door or demand an explanation, he didn't throw a name in my face or ask me why I needed someone else's hands more than his. He simply vanished into action. It made me dizzy. The stillness of it, like standing on what looked like solid ground and realizing it was actually ice. Later that evening, I opened my iPad and noticed the battery was nearly drained, which was strange. I'd left it fully charged. When I checked the battery history, there was a spike between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., exactly when I'd been asleep. He'd backed it up. I opened photos, clicked into recents, and found a cache I didn't recognize. Screenshots of my text threads, messages I thought were long gone, threads I deleted, swiped clean, buried under months of digital noise, and there he was. Ethan, gym selfies, emoji-laced banter, my own voice too, playful voicemails I'd forgotten I left. One where I giggled and said, "He's so serious all the time. Sometimes I just need to breathe, you know?" The photo that really shook me wasn't graphic. It was subtle. Me in a hotel robe, smiling at the mirror. Just a timestamp, a geotag, and a comment from Ethan. Can't wait to peel that off you again. It wasn't the content, it was the fact that it was now out of my hands. I shut the iPad, nearly dropped it, my stomach turned. I hadn't realized how easy it would be for him to find everything. All those times I assumed he didn't notice I was texting under the table, that he didn't know I'd turned off read receipts, that he'd never figure out Ethan's last name, I'd forgotten who I was married to. He wasn't just smart, he was patient, observant, the kind of man who watched the patterns long before he touched the pieces, the kind who never bet unless he already knew the outcome. And now I was part of the calculation. By nightfall, I'd lost my appetite. I heard his car pull into the driveway around 8, but I didn't go greet him. I sat at the dining table, laptop open, pretending to work. When he walked in, he looked normal, no fury, no cold shoulder. He asked how my day was. I told him, fine, quiet. He nodded, poured himself a glass of water, then sat across from me. After a long pause, he asked, "Do you remember the clause we added when we rewrote the joint account terms last year?" My throat tightened. "Clause 4?" I said. He took a sip, then calmly replied, 4B, emergency liquidity transfer. Doesn't require spousal notification if other party initiates withdrawal first. We both signed it, I nodded. Right. He didn't say another word. Just stood, walked upstairs, and closed the door. That night, I didn't sleep either, but I did realize something. This wasn't damage control anymore. This was survival. He started smiling again. That's what threw me, not the kind of smile that reaches the eyes, no. Just a calm, unreadable, curve of the mouth, like he was watching a play I didn't know I was in. That week, I tried to bridge the distance thinking maybe we could still rewind, reconstruct, rewrite, so I bought him a book. It was subtle, at least I thought so. Hardcover, matte black, the title pressed in clean serif, Emotional Maturity for Modern Men. I placed it on the edge of his desk like an olive branch dipped in implication. He didn't say much when he saw it, just raised an eyebrow. Then, to my surprise, he thanked me. No sarcasm, no questions. The next morning, I found him at the breakfast table, coffee steaming beside him, flipping through the pages like it had always been his. And he made sure I saw. Every turn of the page felt like a mirror angled back at me. That evening, he sat on the couch with his laptop. The soft click of keys, quiet as a heartbeat, filled the room. I asked if he was working late. He nodded. Just cleaning up some accounts? His tone was light, unbothered, but I felt the current underneath. Around 10 p.m., he got up to brush his teeth. I waited until I heard the faucet run, then peeked at his screen. His browser was open to a social media site. I couldn't see the name on the profile, but I caught the URL. It wasn't his. I closed the laptop quickly. Back in bed, he said, "You ever think about going back to that spa we visited last year?" I blinked. "What spa?" "For our anniversary," he said, eyes on the ceiling. "The one with the cedar sauna and that view of the hills." I felt my stomach drop. That spa had resurfaced recently, in a way I hoped he hadn't seen, but he just smiled faintly and turned over, the conversation dangling like a wire-stripped bear. The next morning, I made the mistake of checking Ethan's profile. Not our messages. I knew better than to leave a trail, but his public posts. One stood out. Recent, same spa, same soft robes. The caption, "She says he doesn't even notice when she's gone." My hand went cold. He'd tagged the location. It was from 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I told my husband I was taking a mental reset day. I even left a note about visiting my sister. I stared at the post for a full minute, then checked the likes. There, among the sea of gym junkies and local wellness influencers, was a new account. Generic name, no photo, but one of the likes hovered just a second too long when I refreshed the page. He'd seen it. He was watching. I tried to regain some footing. Left him small gestures. Cleaned up the spare room, cooked the lasagna he liked, burned the edges a little just the way he always requested. He thanked me, helped himself, but didn't sit beside me. Just carried the plate to his office and shut the door. That night, while he was in the shower, I picked up his phone from the nightstand. It was locked. New passcode. I set it down fast, feeling the cold glass like a warning. The next morning, there was a sticky note on the fridge. "Thanks for dinner. Lasagna was perfect." No name, just the note. But the handwriting, it was too neat, too calculated, like every loop of every letter had been drawn with a ruler. That same day, I got a call from Marla, our marriage counselor. She said my session next Thursday was confirmed. I hadn't booked it, but someone had. I checked the portal. There it was. Individual session. Emotional clarity. I stared at the screen, trying to piece it together. He was mapping something, guiding me down a path while pretending to stand still. That night, he asked if I needed help setting up the guest room. I said no. He just nodded. Before he turned in, he said, "Let me know if you need anything." The exact words I used when he was sick last year, when I tucked the blanket around him and kissed his forehead. Now they felt like a verdict, and I couldn't shake the sense that every move I made was already part of his design. I kept waiting for a confrontation, some sharp question, a raised voice, a slammed door, but it never came. Instead, it was little things, the kind you'd only notice if you knew him well. He stopped asking what time I'd be home, stopped suggesting we watch anything together. Even his shoes, always left by the door, disappeared into the hall closet, like he didn't want reminders of himself visible anymore. And yet, he was still polite, still present, still watching, still. One evening, I came home and found the trash taken out, dishwasher humming, the lamp beside the couch casting that soft glow he always preferred after sunset. For a moment, it almost looked like nothing had changed, but then I saw the edge of a manila folder peeking from his briefcase, a different color than the usual ones, thicker. He was planning something. I should have backed away, should have played it safe. but ego makes fools out of us. Instead, I tried to reassert control, started scheduling spa days again, buying new lingerie, forwarding Ethan short little texts when I knew my husband was still in meetings. Nothing explicit, just breadcrumbs. But one night I opened my calendar and saw an event that I didn't recognize. Dinner W hubby, smile and behave. I blinked. I hadn't written that. I scrolled further. Another event a few days later. Spa. Cancel W Ethan. My heart stopped for half a beat. I clicked into the metadata, created by a device I didn't recognize, synced automatically. He'd been in my calendar. Not just viewing it, editing it. I stared at the screen, hands shaking, unsure if I was being warned or watched, or both. But when I confronted him, casually over breakfast, he played it so smooth it made me feel insane. "Do you have anything on your schedule Friday night?" I asked, keeping my voice light. He looked up from his coffee, thought for a second, and said, "Nope, why?" "No reason," I replied. He smiled. "We should do something, maybe dinner." I nodded. "Sure." He took another sip and returned to his tablet like nothing had passed between us. But I noticed the flicker in his eyes when I pulled out my phone, like he knew I'd seen it, like he wanted me to. The next day I noticed another event had been added and removed in the span of an hour. I never saw the title. Just a ghost entry on my synced watch notifications. I was being outplayed, that much was clear, and I started to wonder what else had he taken. Our house was in both our names. Or at least it used to be, but I hadn't looked at the filings in months, maybe more. He handled the logistics, the taxes, the estate plan. I was the one who signed what he sent over, never reading past the summary lines. And now, I wasn't so sure that was still true. I tried to access our shared living trust, but the login rejected me, twice. Third time, it redirected to a new portal. Private LLC registry. His name, not mine. That night, he offered to make tea. As I sat on the couch, watching the steam rise from the mug he handed me, I noticed his phone light up beside him. He didn't reach for it, he just tilted it slightly away from my view. A few seconds later, I got a ping on my own screen. Calendar update. I opened it immediately. It's another message. Dinner, W hubby, smile and behave. He'd re-added it. I nearly dropped the phone. I looked up, and there he was, watching me watch it, not with malice, not with satisfaction, just calm, controlled calculation, like a man adjusting the thermostat on a slow burn, not to boil, just to keep the heat rising. He waited until Friday night, the kind of evening where the sky hangs dark and soft, no wind, no urgency. I was in the kitchen reheating leftovers when he walked in, loosened his tie, and poured himself a glass of water. He didn't speak at first, just leaned against the counter, watching me with that unreadable calm that had started to replace the man I used to know. Then he asked it, so casually I almost missed the wait. "You think we should go away soon?" I paused, bowl in hand. "Go away?" He nodded, swirling the water in his glass. "Just a weekend. Maybe the cabin upstate?" I blinked, like, together? He shrugged, smiling faintly. "Why not? We haven't in a while." I tried to read him, looked for any sign that this was bait, but he gave me nothing. Just that quiet, almost bored stillness. I poured another half glass of wine instead of answering. He didn't press. And that silence, it sat between us the rest of the evening, silence that felt too patient. Saturday morning, he left early, said he needed space to clear his head, packed a small overnight bag, kissed the side of my hair, and was gone by 7:00. I told myself it was a good thing, that maybe he needed distance to soften, to think, but beneath that something colder hummed, a low, quiet dread. I still don't know why I called Ethan. Habit, maybe, or ego. He came over just after 9. He brought takeout, like old times, said I looked tired, said maybe I needed to feel seen again. He didn't ask if my husband was home. I didn't offer. We drank, talked, touched, and sometime after midnight, when I came back from the bathroom, I found him in the kitchen, wearing my husband's robe. He laughed when I froze in the doorway. "Too much?" I didn't answer. My chest tightened. My pulse beat in my ears. It was a joke to him, an easy, dumb joke. But to me, it was something else entirely. A threshold. A line. I nearly told him to take it off. Instead, I poured another glass of wine. He left the next morning around 6. I stripped the sheets, stuffed the robe into the hamper, and opened the windows to let the air change. It wasn't guilt I felt, it was exposure. Some part of me knew, he knew. I don't know how, but he did. He came back Sunday night, calm, rested, like he'd been hiking or sitting quietly in some wooded cabin. He brought me a small tin of tea, jasmine, my favorite. "How was your weekend?" he asked, setting the tin on the counter. "Quiet," I said too quickly. "Yours?" "Good," he said. "Hell cleared a lot up." We didn't talk much over dinner, but I caught him glancing at his watch a few times, tapping it lightly like he was scrolling through messages. That's when it clicked. He had the cameras linked, the ones we installed 2 years ago after a string of neighborhood break-ins. I'd forgotten about them, tucked into corners, one above the front door, one discreetly above the kitchen, and the third in the hallway, right outside our bedroom. I hadn't even looked at the system in over a year, but he had. He'd armed them, synced them, and now he had footage, not confrontation, not fury, just data. That night, I lay awake in bed, watching him sleep, or pretend to. His breathing was steady even. His body turned slightly toward me like we were still two halves of something real, but the way his hand rested on his watch face, I knew. I'd stepped into something I couldn't erase, and he wasn't running anymore. He was collecting. The note on the fridge was the first thing I saw when I came back from Pilates. Just a scrap of lined paper stuck under a magnet shaped like a peach. His handwriting, steady as ever. "Let's talk soon. About us." I read it twice. The wording was gentle, almost warm, but it made my pulse spike anyway. About us could mean anything, could mean everything. It was the kind of phrase people use before ending things, or proposing something radical, or maybe just checking if there's still something to salvage. He was in the living room when I came in, sitting with his tablet, glasses on, calm, civil, like the weekend hadn't held any fractures. "Hey," I said, "I saw your note." He nodded. "Figured we should talk. You free later?" "Of course." I smiled. Too quickly. I spent the rest of the afternoon walking on eggshells I couldn't even see. Every time he looked my way, I wondered if he knew, if he was about to say it out loud, if he'd ask about the rope, about Ethan, about anything. But he didn't. At dinner, I decided to take the lead. "I know I've been distant lately," I said, trying to sound vulnerable, not guilty. "But it's not like I betrayed you." He passed me a glass of wine. Not a word, just the clink of glass against glass. Then, finally, he said, "Of course not." Something about the way he said it chilled me more than a slap would have. He reached for his phone, tapped something, then turned the screen toward me. It was an article, something from a wellness site. "When couples grow apart, how to navigate the quiet drift." "I've been thinking," he said, "maybe space would help. Just a little breathing room." I blinked. "Like, time apart?" He shrugged. "Not a divorce, not yet, just clarity." I swallowed hard. "Okay, maybe that's smart." He nodded, like a therapist who'd been expecting the answer all along. After dinner, he cleaned the dishes like it was any other night. I went upstairs and closed the door quietly, sat on the bed with my laptop open and a million tabs swirling in my head. I searched rental listings just to see, nothing serious, just curiosity, a backup. 10 minutes later, I clicked over to messages, opened the thread with Ethan. He's finally pulling away. Maybe we've got a shot. I stared at it for a minute before hitting send. Then I tossed the phone on the bed, stood, and walked into the bathroom. What I didn't know was that his phone, resting on the hallway console, buzzed at that exact moment, that he had screen mirroring software running, that he'd already enabled live screen recording. The message lit up clear as glass. He didn't reply, didn't confront me, didn't even shift in the chair where he sat reading on the patio. The next morning, I found the printed copy of the message in the printer tray, half hidden under some tax forms. No note attached, no underlining, just the page. Stark. Proof. I stood there holding it, hands trembling, trying to decide if I should shred it or confess. I didn't either, because I knew now I wasn't steering anything. He was, and he was doing it with terrifying precision. I walked into the meeting thinking I was in control. It was at Alex's office, a modest, neutral space, warm tones, and a fake fern in the corner. One of those places built to feel safe. Staged empathy. My husband had scheduled it, called it a mediation, said it might help us both be clearer about what we wanted moving forward. Boundaries, space, maybe even closure. I wore a soft gray sweater, minimal makeup, calm, contrite eyes. I rehearsed my lines in the car, how I'd admit to feeling neglected, how I'd frame it all as confusion, not betrayal, how I'd maybe even get him to take some of the blame. Alex greeted me at the door, polite, steady, a handshake too firm for a man wearing a therapist's smile. Then I saw the table, just 2 chairs and a binder. My husband sat across from me, posture straight, hands folded in his lap. Not cold, collected, not hostile, silent. He nodded once when I sat down. Alex began, voice smooth and practiced. Before we proceed, we'd like to present a few concerns, for clarity. Then he slid the binder across the table. It landed in front of me with a soft, final sound, not a thud, just weight. I hesitated, then opened it. First page, hotel reservation logs, 4 of them, all with my name, all tied to weekends I claimed to be out of town for family obligations or wellness resets. Second page, calendar screenshots, events I never remembered creating because I hadn't, but there they were in my color, my account, doctored just enough to make me look like I'd tried to cover my tracks. Then photos of me, blurry but undeniable, one with Ethan outside our house, another of him inside our living room, glass of wine in hand. The worst one, him leaning against the doorframe in that robe, my husband's robe. The timestamp burned like a brand. Next came voicemails, transcribed. One of them was mine, light and stupid and flirty. He's gotten so serious lately. You're the only one who makes me feel seen. The final page was a legal excerpt. Bolded at the top, Clause 9A, willful deprivation plus alternative fulfillment, forfeiture of marital claim. My throat dried. I closed the binder slowly, looked up, met his eyes. He hadn't moved, just sat there, watching. I felt heat crawl up my neck, not just from shame, but disbelief at the planning, the scale of it, the quietness. Did you plan this? I asked, my voice breaking at the edges. He didn't flinch, didn't gloat. Just reached for his water, took a small sip, and set it down again. The silence in the room wasn't heavy, it was surgical. Alex cleared his throat. We'll need to establish revised terms, of course, but we're prepared to move forward with a clean separation, expedient, private. I barely heard him, because in that moment all I could think about was how far behind I really was, how I thought I'd been navigating the shadows, sneaking through the cracks of a broken marriage, and instead I'd walk straight into the light he'd positioned perfectly. I wasn't steering anything, I was being cornered, and the worst part, he never had to raise his voice. I showed up at the house before dark. I wasn't thinking clearly, I just wanted to talk. I told myself that the meeting hadn't broken me, that I could still fix the optics, maybe reframe things with emotion, vulnerability. I'd seen the photos, the documents, the clause numbers I never read when I signed, but I thought maybe if I spoke directly to him face to face, we could press pause, or at least slow the fall. He answered the door, didn't invite me in. Just stood there in the frame, eyes calm, voice even. You said you were confused, so I've arranged a place where you can get clarity. I blinked. A place? I booked you a furnished short-term rental, he said. It's clean, quiet, month to month, leases in your name. I laughed, but it came out more like a cough. You're serious? He didn't nod, didn't smirk, just waited. My heart slammed against my ribs. We need to talk, like really talk, face to face, without lawyers or traps. This is me talking, he said. I looked past him into the house. The kitchen light was on. The hallway smelled faintly of jasmine and something cleaner, pine maybe. It looked untouched, like I didn't live there anymore. Please, I whispered, you're being cold. He tilted his head. No, I'm being deliberate. I snapped then, stormed out, slammed my car door hard enough to rattle the frame, drove around for an hour, screamed into my steering wheel once, told myself he'd cool off. He always did. But the next morning, everything was different. My key didn't work. I twisted it hard twice, then stopped when the deadbolt didn't budge. I knocked. No answer. My phone lit up with an alert from the bank. Joint account. Updated activity. The balance now read 0.00, not because he stole it, because he moved it. Later I learned it was transferred legally, carefully, into instruments protected by the trust I'd once signed without reading. Clause 12F. Emergency reallocation in case of moral breach. I tried to get into my car, the one I drove every day. Nothing. He hadn't taken the car. He'd just deactivated my access from the app. His name was still on the title. My gym login failed next. At first, I thought it was a tech issue. Then I saw the cancellation notice, effective immediately, canceled by primary account holder, no refund due. I texted him twice, then 3 more times, all read. None answered. I called, straight to voicemail. My 6th message was shorter than the rest, less pleading, more edge. You're just being petty now. What happened to communication? His reply came 1 minute later. A photo of our wedding contract. Page 4, 2 sections highlighted. Clause 9A, willful deprivation plus alternative fulfillment, forfeiture of marital claim. Clause 14C, post-breach actions void mutual consent clauses. Below that, nothing, no caption, no threat, just cold ink and legal weight. I stared at it for a long time, then I tried to reply, but the message bounced, blocked. I sat there, blinking at the screen, realizing the full weight of it. He wasn't punishing me, he was erasing me. Not with rage, not with slander, not with spectacle, with structure, one boundary at a time, one removal at a time, until all I had left was a screenshot of what used to be. I didn't want to file, not really. But after everything, after the binder, the rental, the locks, the silence, I had no choice. My lawyer told me there was still room to negotiate, that some of the property transfers might be reversible, or at least disputable, that the clause numbers he kept referencing weren't unbreakable if we framed the right narrative. So I contested. I told myself it wasn't about money, that it was about fairness, about balance, that we'd built a life together and that meant something. But deep down, I knew he wasn't going to give ground, not because he was vindictive, because he was finished. Still, we pushed. My lawyer, Karen, was sharp, confident. She spoke with phrases like emotional duress, partial forfeiture, subjective fulfillment. She cited precedent, dug into the trust documents, questioned the legality of how fast everything moved. For a moment, I felt hopeful, until Alex responded. He didn't argue, didn't even raise his voice. He simply slid a single-page response across the table. At the top, Clause 14C, and below it, a summary. Retaliation or deception post-withdrawal nullifies remaining claims. Then came the attachments. A log of my messages to Ethan after the mediation, screenshots of me searching rentals, contacting agents, forwarding jokes, laughing emojis, apartment links, the time-stamped photo of the robe. Alex had prepared the timeline so cleanly it made my own lawyer pause. That's comprehensive, Karen muttered. He only nodded. We're not seeking punishment, just resolution. Karen asked for a break. In the hallway, she looked at me and said quietly, You won't win this. I didn't answer, because I already knew. We returned to the room and folded. The settlement was swift, brutal in its precision. I left with what I came with, my name, my phone, and a few boxes of clothes. The house, gone. The accounts, sealed. The car, his name only. Even the gym membership he'd once added me to under spouse benefits, canceled and not reissued. When we appeared in court for the formal ruling, I sat 2 seats away from him, clutching a tissue I didn't need. He didn't look at me once, didn't glare, didn't smirk, just watched the judge, calm and still as stone. When it was over, the judge cleared his throat and said, It's rare to see such preparation. Plaintiff acted with foresight and dignity. This court sees no grounds for redistribution. Then he dismissed us. My husband stood, buttoned his jacket, and nodded once. Not to me, to the clerk. He walked out before I could even stand, didn't slow, didn't glance back, didn't need to, because everything that needed saying had already been signed. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, no calls, no emails, not even an invoice from the lawyers. Just silence, cold, surgical absence, the kind that makes you wonder if you ever existed in someone's life at all, or if you'd simply been erased like a corrupted file. Then one morning, I got the notification, password reset requested. It came from one of his old backup drives, a cloud link tied to an email I barely remembered, one I'd clicked through once when we shared a printer years ago. I hadn't meant to trigger anything, I just wanted to see. Maybe there was something in there, a photo, a message, a scrap of softness I could use to remember the version of him who used to kiss my shoulder in the morning and hum while making pancakes. But the link didn't take me to a folder. It shut me out. 2 minutes later, I got a shipping notification, priority mail, no return address. The package arrived 2 days later, small, padded, inside a USB drive, black, unlabeled. I plugged it in, pulse racing, somewhere between curiosity and dread. 3 files. The first was a JPEG. On the spa photo, me in a white robe, reflected in the mirror, smiling slightly, hand on my hip. I remembered the moment. What I didn't remember until now was that the robe had his initials embroidered on the sleeve. The second file was a screenshot. Ethan's profile. New picture. Same smug grin. Status, back on the market. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the third file's name to burn into my retinas. Once a month? PDF? My hand hovered over the trackpad. I clicked. It opened slowly. Blank for a beat. Then one line appeared. Centered, bold. Turns out, that was one time too many. Nothing else. No signature, no flourish, no threat, just the sentence, just the echo of the moment I'd thought I was clever, flippant, untouchable. The phrase I tossed at him like a jab in the dark, thinking I'd win whatever game I thought I was playing, and he'd turned it into the full stop at the end of us. I closed the file, ejected the drive, sat there in my kitchen, blinking at the empty mug in front of me like it could tell me what to feel, but all I felt was the silence again. Only now I understood what it meant. He wasn't angry, he wasn't mourning, he was done, and he'd left the perfect souvenir to make sure I remembered that forever.